illness with Angelique. We met in a support group for Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which we both have. The support group is for those who have the diagnosis and are working to get the diagnosis. And as I understand it, you are waiting on genetic testing to come back.
Yes, I actually just got the genetic test in the mail today.
Oh, what was your result? If you don't
I
mind
haven't
sharing.
I haven't done the actual test yet. I have to do it and send it off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So it's moving along.
it
But
is.
it's suspected that you have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Yes, and possibly vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Ah, that is definitely not fun.
No, definitely want to hopefully rule that one out.
Yes. Um, so, if you don't mind me asking, what were the first indications that something was not quite right?
The amount of joints I had either dislocating or subluxing, and the doctors just could not figure out why.
Ah. Was this happening all your life, or did this start happening recently or in the last couple of years?
It started about 8 years ago, towards the end of middle school. My knee started acting up, and so I went to the doctor. And they did their x-rays and everything, and they're like, "We don't really know what's wrong, but your kneecap is separating from your knee."
That's no good.
No, it's not. So I ended up on crutches for about 2 weeks. And after that, my knee was fine for a while, but it has like periods where it acts up and like the kneecap will start to separate again. So usually I'm good at being able to snap the kneecap back in place and not needing to use my crutches. But there are days where it's just happening so often throughout the day that it's like I just need to be off of that leg or use like a crutch of some sort to take off some of the pressure from my knees in order to be able to just walk normally without the pain.
Wow. So, how have your doctors reacted to your concerns? Was it difficult for them to you kind of see the pattern in this being kind of like a regular thing?
Yes. First started with the knees, and then like a year or two later, it got to the ribs. They're like, we still don't know what's going on. They did testing for a bunch of different autoimmune disorders. They all came back normal. Eventually, it got to my toes, my fingers, my shoulders, and finally, with the PT that I was in for my jaw, because I was having a lot of jaw problems, the physical therapist was like, I recommend you going and seeing an orthopedic specialist. So I got a hold of my primary at the time and was like, my physical therapist thinks I should see an orthopedic specialist to try to figure out what's going on with all my joints because they're kind of just falling apart right now. And so they sent over the referral. I was seen in like 2019, so it was quite a while before I was actually able to see any sort of doctor to try to figure out what was going on with my joints. And at the appointment, he was like, "You're definitely hypermobile and you might have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome." And at that point, I hadn't even heard of what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was. So I left the appointment, went home, told my mom what he had said, and we Googled it. And all the symptoms that they listed out fit me to a T. And I was like, oh my God, this could actually be what's wrong with me. I could finally get some answers. And so he referred me, the orthopedic specialist, to the Mayo Clinic here in Minnesota in Rochester, but they declined me
Oh,
and they didn't give me a reason why. They said I was in the best care possible and that was it. So
wow.
just, yeah, discouraged from that, I kind of just waited until the end of 2020 when I ended up having to go to urgent care because my hip had started bothering me. And the day I went in, I could hardly walk because of how bad the pain was. And like they did x-rays and everything, and there was inflammation and they didn't really know what it was from. So they put me on prednisone, like they normally do for anything with inflammation.
Right.
Yeah. So the 5-day course of that did nothing this time for me. So
Wow.
I finished the 5-day course. The pain was unbearable. This time I couldn't walk. And I was just in so much pain and like I was basically crying on the phone when I called over, be like, can I be seen? And so I ended up in urgent care. And then they had me go upstairs to the primary and she's like, I'm gonna put you in physical therapy for your hip. And I also brought up that, I'm suspected of having Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and she kind of just went over everything. I was like, you could definitely have the hypermobile type. And I think it was like the third time of me going back and seeing her because of bruising, because I bruise really easily. She was like, I'm going to do all these tests, just try to rule out what's causing you all the bruising. Otherwise, I'm going to refer you to rheumatology. Of course, all my labs came back normal again. Rheumatology, they were of no help.
Aw.
I walked in. She's like, I can try to rule out rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm like, well, they already did that. But sure. And so we ruled that out. And she's like, I don't really know why they sent you here because I can't diagnose you. You have to see a geneticist. And I was like, okay, do you know of anyone? And she was like, no, not in the state of Minnesota right now. The one that was at Mayo Clinic left. And the one that was at the University of Minnesota left too. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then through the support group that we're both in, I was seeing everyone commenting that they got their genetic testing like done through Invitae, and I was like, okay, I need to do this because it's too expensive to go out of network. And this was like a third of the price of what I would have paid had I gone out of network.
Right.
So got the test now, finally able to do it. Hopefully either later tonight or tomorrow morning before I go to work to get that sent in.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then I was in the hospital last week because I was in tachycardia and I had to leave work because it was so bad to go to the hospital. And so I saw the cardiologist Monday morning, and he's like, don't really know what's causing you to go into tachycardia, but he ordered a echocardiogram and a Holter heart monitor for 24 hours, which I have to schedule. And he's like, once you get the genetic testing back, we'll kind of go from there. Because I brought up to him, it could be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because they suspect it. And he's like, yeah, we'll wait until the testing just to know what we're dealing with. So,
That's so frustrating. And a lot of us go through pretty much the same thing. Just, it's always a long journey to get these complicated diagnoses.
yep. And for me to just even get the right treatment for my migraines was a journey in of itself. It took me 4 different neurologists to
Yeah.
finally get one that was like, I'll actually help you.
So, has your insurance situation impacted your care at all?
Yes. So since I'm now 21, no longer living with my parents, I'm still carried under their insurance, but I have to pay copays every time I go to the doctor or the hospital. And so $25 every time I see the primary or go to urgent care, and $75 every time I go to the hospital. So just this month, I've already had to pay over $100.
That's crazy.
It is, and with how bad things are getting and how frequent I'm having to see doctors or I'm in the hospital because something's going on. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if come like April, I've paid almost $300 in medical bills.
That's insane.
It is.
Um, a lot of, I mean, a little bit of unsolicited advice. A lot of hospitals and a lot of care systems do have like a medical financial assistance program. Um, and I myself have literally been saved by my hospital's medical assistance program.
Mhm.
There's lots of different criteria. You don't need to like qualify for Medicare to be able to qualify for financial assistance. It could be need based on income or need based versus like, look, this is how much I'm spending. And
Mhm.
if your bills are over a certain amount, they'll help. And it's been a lifesaver for me. And I don't often let my friends talk about struggling with their medical bills without advising at least looking into
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
um, so this has been going on since middle school, and
Yeah.
does this uh, impact how you interact with your friends or your family at all?
My parents for the longest time, because like the main problem besides the joint was the migraines, because I had migraines at the start every day for a year before they could actually get me on medication to calm them down. And my parents thought I was just overreacting and that it wasn't that bad. So they would tell me like on days where I was just breaking down crying because I was in so much pain to just get over it. And so now that they kind of are like, oh shit, there's actually something that's probably wrong. They've kind of changed their viewpoint of everything, and they're kind of in the whole process now of like helping me try to figure out what's wrong. They're really on board. Like if my genetic testing comes back and it shows I have the vascular type of EDS, they're on board to getting my younger siblings tested too to see if they would also happen to have it. Um, my friends I don't really have a lot of friends because of everything that's going on. Because it's just so hard for me to get out and do stuff and like move around. Because there's days where I'm absolutely exhausted from just having to try and just keep myself composed and together. Um, but like the friends that I do have, they're really understanding and they're always there to like listen to me rant if I have like a bad doctor's appointment or something like that. Um, So on my friend's side, it's been really nice and really they're really supportive. And like I'm even on a Snapchat group with a bunch of other kids about my age that also have EDS. So we just kind of sit there and like support each other, encourage each other to get through the day and everything.
That's great. Being one on one with with
With others like me, yeah.
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 I mean, I know when I found these support groups, it was very helpful. Um, so, um, many of us who have chronic illnesses have been referred to mental health providers. Have you had a similar experience with that?
I have not. I've never been like referred to anything for like mental health related. Um, the only thing that I feel like with my neurologist, he put me on trazodone, which is an antidepressant. It's meant to help me sleep, but I feel like that's also kind of like doing a second job and like keeping me from becoming so depressed on like days I'm having really bad episodes. So I feel like that itself is just knocking out two birds with one stone.
That's true. Um, so which you uh yeah, we're still lagging. I apologize. Um, I just remembered that you said that you were working. Um, what do you do for work?
I am a teller at a bank.
Ah, has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome impacted the hours that you could work or how you work?
It hasn't impacted the hours I work. I'm actually getting more hours, starting like this week. So it doesn't impact me hour wise. It just impacts me like more on the physical side. So I have to take more breaks where I'm sitting down if it's not as busy. Um, I know with all the standing I do, there are days where I have to use my crutches just to kind of take the weight off of my hip because my hip will act up. Um, then there are days where my wrists will act up, so I'll be in a brace at work trying to like type on the computer and fill out forms. But overall, it doesn't really impact me work wise too much. It's just I'm able to take the breaks that I need, so I do well.
True. Is your employer understanding about taking additional breaks if necessary?
Yes.
That is wonderful.
Yep. And they're really understanding. Like if I need a day off because I had to see the cardiologist or the doctor for whatever reason, they'll just give it to me that without questions being asked.
That's great. That's absolutely great. Um, is is there anything that I haven't touched on that you would that you would kind of wish I'd asked, or is there something that you would like additional that you would like to share?
I could go into detail about my migraine journey.
Yes, yes, that's definitely a chronic ailment that afflicts a lot of us.
And
So
once I get
so
to about
be
the
my
middle part
guest.
of it, about the middle part of it, you're not even going to believe what actually happened.
Okay.
Um, so I was fine until freshman year of high school. I ended up getting a really bad concussion, which was misdiagnosed in severity. So I didn't get the
Wow.
proper treatment for it. So my neurologist suspects that's kind of what also started the headaches, just from that one incident. So I kind of like held it off for a while with the constant headaches. So I was like, oh, it's no big deal. It'll go away eventually. It's just from the concussion. But they didn't. So my mom took me to the children's hospital here in Minnesota to their neurology department. And so saw one person in the department. And they're like, well, we'll put you on this like medication to take like right as they're starting to happen to knock them out of you. And we'll change your diet and we'll go from there and see what happens. I was like, okay, cool. So I felt the migraine coming. I took the medication. It was like a dissolvable pill that you put under your tongue, and it blew the migraine out of the water. It was so bad. It did the exact opposite. So we went back and we're like, this isn't gonna work. And they're like, okay, we'll take you off of it. And so when I went back the second time, it was a different doctor. And she's like, yeah, we'll take you off of it. But we'll try this medication and we'll keep with the diet. I was like, okay. So we stuck with that for a few months. It didn't seem to help. They had done an MRI with and without contrast. Nothing was wrong on the MRI that they could see. And finally, I got fed up with it not helping, and I went back for a third time. And this time I saw the head doctor of neurology. I walked into that appointment that day with a small headache. So I was like, oh, no big deal. It's just a small headache. It should stay fine. By the end, the migraine, I was crying walking out because I was in so much pain. I explained to him I have these headaches that last days on end. The pain gets so bad that I can't focus in school and it's impacting my schoolwork. He turned around and said, "You have ADHD. You can't focus, and that's what's causing your headaches."
Oh my
So
goodness.
yep. And so my mom turned around and was like, "It's not ADHD. Her younger brother has ADHD. She doesn't have it. The headaches are causing her to lose focus because she's just in so much pain she can't concentrate." And he's like, "No, you're wrong. I know what I'm talking about." So he put me on ADHD medication. My mom walked me out of there. She's like, "We're never coming back." But we tried the ADHD medication. We gave it 2 days. It was pointless. So my mom was like, "We're just gonna stop you." And I was so irate over the fact that he just was not listening to me, and he thought he knew me over my own self, that I put off going to another neurologist for quite a while. I'm glad I finally did, because the neurologist I'm seeing listens to me. He listens to all my concerns. I brought up the fact to him right after I saw the orthopedic specialist. They think I have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and he's like, "Okay, we'll put that as a note in our chart in case something ever comes up that's more severe on the neurological side besides the migraines." So, and like, he put me on valproic acid, and it took a while to figure out the right dosage of that to like stop the migraines. So I was on that for like 4 years. And last February, I was able to come off of it, and I haven't really had like any episodes where I have like a migraine for days on end since coming off. So I am so relieved that I could actually now be off of that medication and not have to have the migraines.
That's good.
Yes.
I had a lot of migraines in high school as well, and I ended up getting Botox injections in the back of my neck. And honestly, that was the only thing that worked for me. So trying to find that one thing that works for your quirk
Mm-hmm.
is often a very frustrating road, especially when you've got a doctor that's just like, "Now you're fine."
Yeah, yeah. And then the one medication that they did put me on back when I was at children's neurology, I remember it now because a lot of people who have EDS are always talking about, like, has anyone had this? It's amitriptyline. And I always put in, yes, I've had it. I was on it for 2 weeks, and then they had to stop me because once it built up in my system, at night when I would fall asleep and my body would start to relax, I'd stop breathing.
Eesh.
So they took me. That was a new side effect that they've never seen on anyone else. So they've got that listed now as a possible side effect. But I'm always like, watch out after it builds up in your system for a while, because you don't know how it's going to react, because it does take a while for it to build up.
Yeah, it can be very very frustrating. So, um I was kind of shooting for an hour interview. But this is usually my hard hitting ender. But I think this is a good time to put it in.
Yeah.
If you were in front of a room full of doctors and you could tell them one thing and teach them one thing, what would you say?
The patient knows their body. What they're expressing for their concern is a legit concern, and listen to them. They're not just going to make it up for attention. It's true. They're experiencing it. It might be out of what you typically would expect for something, but they're experiencing it. Listen to them.
That's great. I often fantasize about saying exactly that. I mean, it really should be standard, medical education.
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, is there anything else that you would like to touch on or tell us before we go?
No, I don't think so. But if anyone's ever curious, you can come back in about a month to find out what my diagnosis was.
I would love a follow up. That would be great. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of booked for March and April, but um I'm gonna put you on the list of people to to put back on once I
Yeah.
start rebooking.
Yeah. Because then we'll get what my test results were. We can follow up with anything I've had going on with cardiology, etc.
That's great. So I'm gonna end the stream. I'm going to post this on YouTube tomorrow.
Okay.
And so thank you to all who are watching. And um I there will be another interview Saturday and every Wednesday for this foreseeable future. I hope. So thanks again, Angelique.
You're
Uh,
welcome.